Okay, welcome everyone. Just getting myself set up, it'll just be a moment. While I'm getting set up, let me know where you're dialing in from and what your name is. That'd be awesome. Share to the page. Okay, well hopefully that's a better view for everyone and that you can all see that a bit better. Only problem is you're not going to be able to see my palette, but hey, we won't worry about that. We will work something out for that in a future live stream. Give me 2 seconds. There's a fair bit of coordinating getting this set up, so I appreciate your patience while I do. Okay, that's better. Awesome. So, let me know whereabouts you are, what you're up to today. I'd like to find out where everyone's from. And hopefully that stream is coming through strongly and you can all see it. Just having my cuppa while we get set up here. So, as you can see on the screen here, I've got a little painting that I've already started, and I'm just going to be doing a bit more work on that today, and talking about, oil painting and so on. You have to excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cough today. So yeah, basically, I was up in the Grampians, one of my favourite spots, and you probably heard me talk about the Grampians a bit, and we've done a few different demos from the Grampians. So this is a photo that I took. It was a baking hot day, it was middle of summer, I think it was between New Year's and Christmas, and we were staying on a sheep station there in the southern end of the Grampians, near Dunkeld, and I took this photo, and you can see it's quite a warm foreground here, and it had these trees here with this lovely shadow effect underneath, and these sheep, and I thought, well, that makes for a different composition. It's not sort of the composition I'd normally paint, but I thought it'd be one that would be worth giving it a go, and having a play around. So I've already done a bit of work here, as you can see. I have started roughing it in, I guess, and getting, what I've really focused on is getting the shapes right, obviously, getting the big shapes right, and getting the interplay of this light, this warmth here, in the foreground against these shadows here. So that's what I've done so far. It is quite wet. It's really thick paint on there, and perhaps at the end of this live stream I'll show you a close-up there, but it's really thick in here and it's still quite wet, so I'm going to be working wet into wet painting, so that should be good. So yeah, so let me know where you're tuning in from as we get started here. Always keen to know where people are, what part of the world people are in, basically. So I think I've finally figured out how to zoom in with the camera. So I think what that means is I'll be able to start doing some live streams with, canvas here and a palette here, and that could work quite well for the future. So look out for more live streams. I'm just going to use this little brush here. Okay, this is I found these on, what's that site where you buy everything from China? I can't remember. But under art supplies brushes, right? So I've been using, in a lot of my training videos and Learn to Paint TV, I use what I call a gesso brush, right? So I haven't got one here handy to show you, but a lot of people can't find that. So, you know, a hoghair gesso brush, if you can't find one, grab one of these. It's just a really super cheap flat brush, okay, even though mine's not flat. It's a flat brush with bristle hair, and when you're doing acrylic or oil, you don't want synthetic hair, generally speaking, okay? So that's what you want, just a flat brush with a nice wide head on it. And as I said, I'm what's that site where you buy stuff from China? Can't remember, but I found this little packet of these brushes here, and I've been experimenting with these to see whether, you know, I might get these done as a branded, more art school brush and start having those available. So it costs a couple of bucks, you know, so you don't need expensive brushes. You definitely don't. Okay, that's enough chit chat. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to work on the trees in here, get those established a bit better, and then I'm going to work on tightening up my sheep and making the sheep work a bit better. So I'm painting in oils, and I'll endeavour to talk you through the colours and things that I'm using. But basically in here, probably a little bit difficult to tell on the live stream, but I've got a whole array of different greens and tones in there. But basically I want to keep it on the dark side. Oh dear, started raining again. Yeah, I'm keeping it on the dark side because I want all this to be shadow, a little glimmer of light coming through behind it. So mixing a dark green, pretty easy. Okay. That's reasonably dry. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lower it down here. Part of the reason why I like this brush, as you push the edge of the brush, the hairs open up, and you get these nice little wispy bits of foliage and so on. Paints itself virtually. All I do is just wave the brush around, and hopefully it turns out right. So you're all very quiet. Where is everyone today tuning in from? I need to connect this area of dark with this area along the bottom here. At the moment it's completely separate apart from the tree trunk, so I'm going to just drop a little bit of that with a slightly warmer version of the dark, just as an overhanging branch, just so that there is some connection there and we start to reduce that amount of light through there. Nobody wants to talk, that's okay, I'll just keep talking. Get a little bit of orange in there now, a bit of cobalt. So I'm varying up the darks. There's a lot of variety in there is what I'm after. Actually, it's a little bit drier, this paint, than what I thought it was going to be, which is good. Whoop. So I'm just using, you know, if you've done any of my online courses at all, then you'll know I'm using just my standard palette. I'm using ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, alizarin crimson. I've got a little bit of burnt sienna in there as well. And I've got a cadmium orange on there, but you don't really need the cadmium orange. I mean, I can get the same result with alizarin crimson with a cad red and a cad yellow. So I'm just using a really basic palette. And you can see the colours are fairly muted, aren't they? They've got this warm patch and we've got a dark patch. And really there's just two bands of colour is what we're looking at here. And then with a little bit of interplay in between those. And how do you make that interesting? Well, you can't just use solid darks in there. You've got to add in little hints of colour, like a little bit of red in there, and there's lots of yellows. So just mixing up the tone, keeping it interesting in the darks is the key. G'day Deanne in Melbourne. Magnificent teacher, oh, thank you very much. Glad to hear that you're enjoying the classes and thank you for joining us, Deanne. Barbara, hi, how you going? Loving the online course, terrific. And I think you're in New South Wales. I can't pronounce the name of your town, Waganya. And Dee Dee Young, watching from Texas. G'day, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Love Texas. I've been to Austin and Dallas. Had to go to Austin because I wanted to go see Stevie Ray Vaughan's memorial. So there's a lot happening at Moore Art School at the moment. Got a huge amount going on. One of the things that I haven't told anyone about yet, but because you've been kind enough to join me today, I'll let you know that I'm in the process of moving the membership site where all the courses are. I'm going to move those over to a more stable platform which will help us grow into the future. So I'll be letting everyone know about that in the next week or two. And more courses, as you've probably seen, we've just released 2 watercolor courses, which I really enjoyed doing those. And on the Murray River, nice, like the Murray River. I think I went to Howlong on the Murray River years ago and stayed on a property there in a beautiful part of the world there, Barbara. And Mary from Ireland, terrific. Ireland's one of those countries that I'm really keen to get to. I've been to the UK quite a bit, well, my wife's from the UK, and I've been to Wales a lot because family up there, and haven't got to Ireland yet, or Scotland, but look out. Very keen. Okay, so I'm just doing a little bit lighter in here, like I've got earthy darks in here. I'm going to get a little bit of a lighter, warmer patch just in there. And if you have a look at the photo, I don't know how well you can see that. You probably can't because the darks are probably filtering out, but there's a little patch of green there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to warm it up with the cad yellow. Okay, I'll just warm up the same mix that I'm using, just some really basic colours with a bit of cad yellow, and I'll just drop that into that section. Right? And notice, like, I'm not concentrating, I'm letting the brush do the work, basically. I'm not trying too hard. G'day Robin in Ballarat. Ballarat, one of the coldest places in the world, but a lovely town. So the only time I've ever seen snowfall in Australia was in Ballarat. It wasn't a heavy snowfall, but it was enough for me. That might sound weird to people in different parts of the world, but I've only ever experienced falling snow out of the sky once in my life. Okay, so we're just adding a little bit more texture in here, and I think that's coming along okay. I need a little touch. I've got to be careful I don't split the painting in half. So if you notice, I put this warmer patch in here, and I've got a little bit of it over there, and then it goes to a totally dark patch over here. And because of the tree trunk, there's a real danger of it just splitting the painting in two. So I will take just a little touch of that, and you can see it's not as strong. Hopefully you can see that on the brush. It's not as strong, but I'll just add a few little touches of it in there to connect the two sides, okay? Really important. Well, Robin, yes, head north, but I have to tell you, I'm on the Sunshine Coast now. I used to live in Geelong, some of you will know, and grew up in Melbourne. And head north definitely, but it is a little bit humid over the summer break. That's the only downside. But if you're good with that, then it's a beautiful part of the world up here. Maybe you're not planning on heading this far north, I don't know. I'm going to take just a little bit of cerulean blue. Why? I don't know. I just saw it on the palette there and I thought, hey, a little bit of cerulean blue. Again, because I've got all this big patch of dark, and I just want to get some interesting tones and textures in there, which I think we have. So I'm going to leave that alone now, because one of the things you want to be really careful of, I think, this is just an opinion, is that you don't spend too much time working on one area and you get bogged down in that one area and you bring that up to a higher level of development, but then the rest of the painting's lagging behind. I think that could be, a bit of a trap. Very easy to fall into. So I'll leave it there and I'll just move slightly. Okay. Now, I've got another little flat brush. This is very crusty. I have to admit, I don't look after my brushes well enough. You can see that it's quite dirty and clogged up, but I'm not going to be put off by that. I'm going to just use it anyway, right? I'm going to take ultramarine blue, pop that down. I'm going to take some cadmium red, even though it's in the shadows there. I'm going to start off with just a little hint of cadmium red in there. And then I'll use some cooler reds as well. So feel free to ask me any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you what I've got coming up with More Art School. So we've just released the 2 watercolor classes, and I've really enjoyed those. I started out with watercolor many years ago, and lost all my hair. Trying to learn how to paint with watercolor, but I love it as a medium. It's what got me into painting, really. My father was a watercolor artist. He wasn't a great artist, but he was good. You know, he used to enjoy going out with the local art group, and so I had no idea this was going on. And one day I was heading to London for business, and he said, "Oh, drop into the Tate Gallery and see the make sure you see the Turner exhibition." And I'm like, "Who's Turner?" and then I found out that he'd been painting, and so that exhibition, you know, totally changed my life. I've got a question here. Do you use hog hair brushes all the time for doing oil and acrylic? I won't say all the time, but 99% of the time, yeah. The only exception will be is I haven't got one handy. Oh, there we are. I use a little rigger brush, which you probably see me use in our weekly Learn to Paint TV show. Okay, little rigger brush. That is, I believe, a synthetic hair. Now that's from a watercolor range made by Neath, and I use that one for little fine details. But for all of this bigger work, which should be 80 to 90% of what we do, definitely I use hog bristle. Well, I don't know. I say hog bristle, but is it really hog bristle? I don't know. It's bristle. It's a natural fibre, and I don't know if it comes from a hog or from wherever. I don't really know. I've just always called it hog bristle, but it's a natural fibre. That's the key, because it's got a little bit more sort of fight in it. You know, like tooth to it. So when you put it on against the canvas, or actually what I'm painting on here is an MDF board. Excuse my head, but that's an MDF board, right? You get it from the hardware store. You can see that one's got a bit of splatter on it. And then I put 2 coats of gesso on that. So it's really thin, and I get them to cut up the different shapes that I want, and I've got hundreds of them here. And then I use gesso and put 2 or 3 coats of gesso. And when I put the gesso on, I use a big brush, and I do it really messy. So I've got lots of hair marks, you know, like lots of grooves and marks to create some interest on the surface. So when I paint on that, the natural bristle fibres in the brushes I use, they take really well, and you get a really great result if you like that impressionist style. But I don't buy expensive brushes, right? Everyone thinks the brush is the key, or the palette, or the whatever. Everyone wants to know what, you know, brand to paint. None of that's really the key. These are $1 or $2. These are cheap jazz art from China, right? And they fall apart rapidly, and I give them a hard time. Basically, my brushes get a workout, you know. Now, I'm painting in the dark here, but notice this sheep and this one here. When I put the highlights on, it was all wet, and I couldn't really get them very refined. So now I'm gonna paint the negative shape. I'm gonna paint the dark back in. I really should have my glasses. In fact, I'm gonna go get my glasses, and I've got to start wearing my glasses more when I paint, because I really can't see. There's a revelation for you, the artist who can't see. Give me 2 seconds. I'll go and grab my glasses so that I can see. let me just answer the question. Do you paint the same oil? Yes, Robin, absolutely. I use the same approach. The medium, obviously, with oil is the only thing that I use with oil is odorless solvent, right, for cleaning the brushes and then to thin the paint down. So with the big difference is with oil you need to start with a thin wash for our darks and then put on thicker paint over that, whereas with acrylic it doesn't matter. So that's the big difference. Do we have another question? Yes, I see you use the rigger. I have one of those. Terrific D. Yeah, they're fantastic. The little, and I'm using a watercolor rigger for oil and acrylic. So that seems to work the best. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Ta-da! I've been putting off getting glasses for ages. Haven't actually got them yet. These are just reading glasses. I'll answer everyone's questions. So better give them a clean so that I can see the little details here. It's a sign I'm getting old. It was my 50th birthday last week. So now I think it's okay if I wear my glasses. Just. Okay. So I've got this paint on here. Notice I've got big clobby bits of paint. I don't fuss about things like that. And now I'm just going to use that blade. I'm not going to use the full face, but the blade, just to work around this sheep, okay, and reduce the size of that highlight back to something more sensible. And then we just start to create our shape. So that one there's got quite a bit of highlight on there. I'll just pull it back a little. I've got a little bit too much light creeping through into there, so I'll pull that back as well. Oop. Still haven't quite got him, have I? So hopefully this live stream is coming across a bit better than previous ones. I finally figured out how to zoom my phone in when I'm doing a live stream, because all the others were just way too far away, which is why I haven't been doing so many of them. I'm like, oh, that doesn't quite work. You think I'm young, D? Thank you, Barbara. Robin thinks I'm young as well. God, I feel young. But anyway, haven't been feeling young because I had a car accident a year ago, messed up my back. I already had a bad back, but the car accident just messed me up completely, and I really struggled to stand up and paint. So I'm getting assistance for it now though. So. Pardon me while I drink my cuppa. Yeah, so it's starting to come good, which is good. All right, let's get some more paint happening here. I'm going to get some burnt sienna. Don't you talk about burnt sienna a lot? I tend to use it more with oil painting. Okay, so I'm using burnt sienna with ultramarine blue. It gives quite a rich dark. I just want to get in here and really just get some more darks happening in here. Not around that tree trunk though. I'm going to have to do something with that tree trunk to make it stand out. Okay, I've got a couple of wayward sheep in the back there, which I've got to figure out what to do with them as well. I'm pretty happy with the foreground. It's quite abstract. But I'm going to leave it like that. I don't really think I'm going to do much apart from a few dots and dashes. And what I did with the foreground was I mixed up yellow ochre. This should be a surprise if you've watched any of our episodes or any of our courses. Yellow ochre and alizarin crimson made up a reddy orange, and that went down as a thinner wet wash for the foreground here. And then I got yellow ochre and white, and while it was still wet, I worked into it, which is why you see all this lovely red poking through. Because what I was trying to do is create a really warm, a sense that it's a really hot, warm day. And I think I've sort of got close to doing that. If you look at this from a distance, you've got all this dark and this sort of hopefully glowing, I don't know, what do you guys think? To me, it feels like it's a really hot, warm day. Purple patches, okay. I've been getting chiropractic and I had a sports massage on my hip and back yesterday, so I'm getting there, My wife says I should have gone earlier, but what us blokes are like. Okay, and I'm adding a little touch of green in here into these shadows now, wide green, to connect it with what's up top. Okay. Just tighten up his highlight a little. So you can see by punning that negative shape, you can shape up the main elements there. So I was going to tell you what's coming up with more art school. So we've just released the 2 watercolor courses, which I'm really happy about those. I'm going to add more content to them and so on. For the moment, they're only available on Udemy, but I'm transferring all of our current member site for More Art School. I'm transferring that to a new platform, and it should be done in about a week or so. And it's going to be a much better platform for the future. And for those who are doing our More Certified Instructor program, the new platform will enable me to have other people create courses and put them up online as well. So the watercolor classes will be available on that new platform in a week or two. But then the other thing I'm doing is, g'day Ruth, Alabama. Nice of you to join us, thank you. Painting a very Australian scene here today, sheep grazing in the midday sun. The other thing I'm doing is an oil painting course. So I'm going to do, at the moment we've got acrylic painting introduction, and I've just done the watercolor painting introduction. So next week I'm going to start filming oil painting introduction. So we're covering all the different mediums. So look out for that course. And then once that course is done, which will take me about a week and a half to 2 weeks, I'm then going to do a course called Light, Shadow and Form, how to create realism using light and shadow in your paintings. And that was the most requested one on the recent survey that I conducted on Facebook. So thank you to everyone who responded to that. And the light, shadow, because that's going to be a more of a master class, higher level than just introductory. So I've been giving that quite a bit of thought and planning as to what we're going to do. Now that shadow's got quite a bit of purple in it. I don't know if that's coming out, but I wanted a little bit of that purple, which is why before I mixed the red into it, because I'm going to make these bodies of these little sheep. And the sheep are abstract shapes, basically. That's looking very weird. What's that there? Don't know. Yeah, they're pretty abstract shapes. I'm not going to try and paint sheep as such. I'm going to keep it fairly abstract. But I want the bodies to have a sort of on the mauvey purpley side. Hence the reason why I've got it in here, in the shadows. So that's a small to medium flat brush. I'm now going to move to, no, not that one. Oh, maybe yes, that one. I was going to say I was going to move to a small flat brush. And this is as small as I've got, so that's the one we'll use. Bit of clumped up paint in there. Animals are hard, I agree, Deanne. It's because we try and paint what we think rather than the abstract shape that we see, and I struggle with it myself, so I completely understand. And Robin's the opposite, so cool. So let me know if you're enjoying this, because if you are, I'll do more. I've used no white except for the yellow here, so I'm now going to just introduce just a tiniest little bit of white. And if you are painting in oils, Winsor & Newton's soft white, titanium white, but it's a soft. is a great white paint to use. Okay, I'm just going to experiment here. Give me a moment. Okay, now I've mixed up that tone there. Problem with that tone there is it's probably too, oh, actually that might work. It's probably a little bit too, what is it, a little bit too purpley maybe. So it's cobalt blue and alizarin crimson. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a pinhead of burnt sienna into it, just to dirty it up a little bit. Okay, just to get a little bit of the grey coming out in it. So that's that one there. Probably wants to go just up on the back side a little bit there. Legs I have a problem with. So question is that too light now? Probably is a touch. And I need to go back and redo those highlights because I've just painted them out. That was silly. I'm going to go a bit darker now. Let's just try this guy. Still a little bit too, not quite right. I just need to separate the tone of it a little bit from the shadow in the back. The shadow in the back is clearly the darkest value, this shadow in through here, like right there, there, and in there. That's our darkest value. The sheep aren't the darkest value, even though they look quite dark. They're looking dark against this light, but not against up there. So painting's a lot of comparison, you know, like knowing what to compare to. If you just look at that in isolation or against the light of the field, you think that's probably your darkest dark, but by comparison to these deeper shadows, definitely not. Robin, do I put a list of what I use? I tend to always reference it in you know, the weekly Learn to Paint TV, talk about what colours I'm using, but I tend to use basically the same thing. You know, my palette I keep really limited, so because this painting I'm doing now is one I'm just doing for myself really, so I'm using a few more colours. But when I teach in our courses or the weekly Learn to Paint TV, I tend to, what's this one doing? Tend to keep a very limited palette. So ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and I say it every episode pretty much. So, but if you have a look on More Art School's website or the learntopaint.tv website, there is a page there on art supplies on both those sites, which gives you a bit of a list of what I use and so on. Okay, that one's too light now, isn't it? I'll get a little bit more burnt sienna into that, and I'll just grey him back. He's got his head sticking up there. So in the course I'm going to do in probably mid-April, which is going to be light, shadow and form, how to use light and shadow. I'm going to talk about things that I haven't talked about before but are pretty important, like reflected light. You know, light will be bouncing off of the surface here, and it's going to be hitting the underneath of these sheet. In fact, you might not be able to see it, but I can definitely see it. Whoop. Okay. give that brush a little bit of a clean. And so underneath their bellies, the light's bouncing up in a few spots, like there, and there, a little bit on his belly there. And I'm going to put that in if I can. And I'm just going to mix it up as an orange. So a little bit of the cad red and a bit of the cad yellow. I want it to be a little bit darker though than the tone that's already there. So a little bit less. Yep. Magpies are having a chat outside my door. Okay. This is the wrong brush for this, I think. It's not going to be any on those back guys. Okay. Now, just notice that I need to tighten up in a couple of spots here. So I'm just mixing up that field colour, or close, doesn't have to be exact. And I just see his head's all a bit blurry there. I'm going to keep it blurry, but just going to try and tighten up a little bit on it. And this paint, like I painted the first part of this 2 days ago, and this paint is just nice and workable now. Just going to define some of their bodies and legs a little bit better. Not going to worry about that bit of shadow I put in there. I can re-establish that. Not sure what's going on there. I'll hide it anyway. And then I'm just going to just flick up into the dark some grasses. Pull it into some wet dark there. So where is everyone else dialing in from? Let us know. And part of the reason why I like to ask is so I can figure out what time zones work for different people. It's getting a bit of a mess in there. I'll just... I've got a very different, it's more of a pinky tone in there, which I want to make sure I keep that in there as well, because I think it works. It's probably originally a combination of the underpainting, but where I come in here and I put all that yellow in, I want to make sure I just get some pinkier tone in there as well. So I just mixed it up, and then just drop it in. And that's just building up different textures and layers in there. G'day from KY. I assume that is Kuala Lumpur. I'm assuming Malaysia. But welcome, Monty. Glad you're here. Sue, g'day. Thanks for joining us. I'm very well, thank you, Sue. Robin, as far as I was told the same thing about acrylic, that you can use acrylic like watercolor, but I don't think it's true. I think from everything I've read and learnt about acrylic paint, water breaks it down, and it's not really designed to be used with large amounts of water, which is why in my courses and so on, hardly ever mix water in with it. Oops. The Atelier Interactives work well with water to rehydrate them, and yet that way you can work back into them. But using water to thin it down. I never do unless I'm doing it as my initial drawing. That's the only time. Hey, do you guys like this little easel here? This is an upright holder. A guy in America makes them, and this is my plain air easel. Now it's just on a little tripod. It's pretty awesome. If you want to know the details, let me know and I'll post a link on our site. Best little plain air setup I've found. Okay, I'm fiddling a little bit now. What do I need to do? Need to get a couple more legs in, I think. So this is where I'll now just switch momentarily to my little rigger brush. Get some dark happening. No worries, D. I'll put it in the comments later on. A guy called Joshua Bean on Facebook, if you look him up. He's got a little business. He's a great artist too. So g'day Denise in Mackay. Welcome. How are things in Mackay today? Got some beautiful places around Mackay there from what I've seen on the Queensland government. Been doing some promos for travelling in Queensland. Okay, concentrate, Rod. I got too much thinner there. I don't know if you saw that, but it just wouldn't take the paint. So I'll just thicken that paint up. I don't want to have literal legs. I want to keep it fairly abstract and hazy. So I don't want to just do 4 legs, you know what I mean? And 4 solid legs. I want little broken bits of paint in there because I want to create that atmosphere of there's lots of heat haze, and so it's really more about just indicating and then breaking up the form of it. All right. Nice little bit of light that's hitting on that tree there. Oh, Kentucky. Is that Kentucky? I bet it is, yeah. G'day Betty, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm mixing up cad red, yellow ochre, and hopefully some titanium white here. I'm getting into details that I don't want to get into just yet. So why are you doing that then, Rod? I don't know. Just because sometimes getting into the highlights can be fun. Okay. Let's try this highlight here now. Now because all that paint there is wet, I've got just that little bit of thinner in the brush. That looks better, that highlight, better than what it was when we started today. So, yeah, I've just got a little tiny bit of thinner in this just to make it flow a bit better. Anyone got any questions you want to ask? Because I'm going to wrap this up at about 11, so another 5 minutes or so. So feel free to ask any questions. Monty, the way I use acrylic, I don't really thin it except for when I'm doing the drawing. So in the Moore method of painting we have the 3 steps, step 1 being the drawing. So when I'm doing the drawing I will use ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson to make up a little dark, and then I'll water that down because I don't want my drawing coming through too strong in the painting. And from that point forward I don't use anything to thin acrylic paint down. What I do is I use a lot of paint. Like I find a lot of beginners, they use nowhere near enough paint, and so they have a lot of trouble getting the paint on. So I use lots of paint and mix up big mixes and then can apply it, and the paint's still wet so I can blend back into it quite easily. From time to time I've used, let me have a look here if I can see it. So I use a particular brand, excuse my body there, liquefying medium, only for tiny little details, but I don't actually find any advantage to that. So the only time I would ever use that to thin acrylic down, a medium like that, is if I'm using this rigger brush. And so I found that it's probably actually easier just to dip it into the water just to get a little bit of moisture on it into the mix of paint. Apart from that, I don't thin acrylic paint down. I actually prefer to just use lots of paint. So I hope that explains it. If you watch episodes of the weekly Learn to Paint TV and so on, then you'll see that I explain that and I demonstrate that as we go. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, Monty. No worries, Sue. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, what I'm going to do is just in the last few minutes add in a couple of details here. I'm going to let this painting sit for a week or two before I do anything else to it, and I'm in no hurry to finish it, but I will post it when I do finish it, just so you can see what the outcome was. That's if you want to see it. But yeah, look out for, if you're in one of our paid courses at the moment, then look out for an email in the next week or two as we move the membership site across, which I think is going to be pretty exciting. But you'll need to just make sure you respond to the email. But look out also for our oil painting course, which I'll start working on that next week, so in about a week and a half. That'll be available as a beginner introduction to oil painting. And as I've done with the 2 watercolor courses, friends on our Facebook page, I'll give you the opportunity to get it at a 80% discount and teach you what we know about oil painting. Just putting in a few twigs, but I'm not doing them thickly like them. Just little subtle touches here and there, little hints of dark against some of those lighter tones in there. I think it's all it needs. Cheers, Dee. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I will take care. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm just going to, I think, yeah, I'm getting to that point with this now where I need to set it down for a day or two or a week, and just give consideration to what else it needs. It needs something. I can see that. But often with painting, you just get a little bit too close to your own work. But hey, I want to thank everyone who's joined us live today. And for those of you who watch the replay as well, it means a lot to me that you've taken the time out of your day to come and join and watch. Because if you didn't, then I wouldn't keep going with doing this. But I really appreciate those of you who do that and leave comments and like the videos and posts and, you know, everything. Because without you guys, you know, I wouldn't be doing it. It's you give me the encouragement to keep going, keep at it. Okay, just going to put a couple little marks there. Thank you, Robin. I shall. I shall. I obviously love teaching art, so I shall indeed keep going. But you know, it's nice to have a little bit of encouragement. Everyone needs a cheerleader as well, and so you guys are awesome at doing that. So I really appreciate you all very much. See, I put that shadow in, but then it was a bit too sort of. There was too much of it, and I'm just losing bits and pieces of it here and there. Oh, that wasn't a good mark. So we want to have some of that shadow in there, but we don't want to have all of it. Okay. And the last thing I'm going to do before we wrap up is just out the back here, that paint was all got a bit thin. That little patch of blue sky there, that's wrong, because I've got yellow on the hill running through there, so the hill line sort of is through there, so that's got to become a bit of a grassy hill there. But I can't just leave it like that. I need to just work over that. Better. So true there, Robin, and there's always a new level to get to with art, a new level to get to, and then, you know, depending on, it's not just the skills, it's also, you know, moving from painting from your head to painting with your heart or your emotions or your soul, however you want to describe it. You know, that intuitive level of painting is an exciting place to be. But also then there's career development as well. So I don't know how many of you tuning in are interested in having art as a career of some sort. It's obviously mine. But there's a whole level of development in that field as well. Selling paintings and so many opportunities these days. We live in the greatest time ever for artists. It's, you know, I could not be doing what I'm doing now back 10 or 15 years ago. It just would have been impossible for me to be able to earn an income from art. So, you know, how blessed am I to be living in this day and age? It's truly incredible. And to be able to connect with you folks, like have you join in, and we have people from the US and all over Australia, Ireland I think we had someone from as well. You know, to be able to have that connection with other art-minded people is just incredible. So yeah, I couldn't have been a working artist, you know, make my living off art 10, 15 years ago. It's only because of the golden age we live in now. Anyway, I'm just rambling on. Robin's too old to worry about selling paintings and so on. Just enjoy it as a hobby, which, you know, that's what my dad did. You know, he got to retirement age and took up art and got reasonably good at it, you know, with the watercolor. And it's because of him that I got inspired to start. So, all right, I'm going to leave it there. Time to wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please, you know, leave a comment and let us know how you enjoyed it and so on. Always appreciated. And feel free to share the video with other people. And now that I've figured out how to zoom in with the phone for the live stream, I'm going to start doing more regular live streams. So look out for that. And I'll finish this painting at another time. So everyone have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed it. I know I certainly have, but I've other things to go and do now. So I'll chat with you all soon. Cheers.